invasion of the real world. While sometimes that is appreciated, this opportunity to go out of my personal comfort zone is one I find very humbling and a major part in who I am growing to become. That all being said, I'm the first one to acknowledge that I do complain about food, and I do complain about my amazing opportunities, and I do still fail to acknowledge how lucky I am, way too often. Community service has provided me the opportunity to meet other people, ranging from young students who need help with addition to older adults who run these organizations. Although many days it feels exhausting, mentally draining, and ineffectual, the reunions I have with the program directors and students alike never fail to put a smile on my face. Looking back on every day, I feel a greater sense of privilege than the day before. I am not gonna lie, community service doesn't always work. It does not always help to the extent that we strive for. It does not always create healthy and organic relationships. I believe a major part of these negative experiences is a common belief among Brooksians. We tend to believe that community service helps those less privileged than us. Although in some aspects this may be true, I find that mindset to be very limiting. This directly leads to a power dynamic between us and the people we help. Eliminating this sense of superiority is what establishes relationships that are actually beneficial and cherished. This program has taught me so much about families, education, wealth, and of course, how to dust cobwebs out of an ancient barn. The friendships I have made with both the students at the Haverhill Boys and Girls Club and my own Brooks peers are the ones which show my greatest personal growth. Mr. K has always been one of those people with a smile on his face, no matter what the task is. I can't wait to hear what he has to share with us today. Thank you.
Thanks, Anya. Good morning, everyone. So when we began community service this fall season, Ms. Johnston asked us to consider why we do community service and why we find it rewarding. This talk today took shape as a result of that question. It's difficult in high school to think beyond the next test or the upcoming weekend. I get it. But that is exactly what service to one's community does. It asks you to consider the great big world beyond the boundaries at Brooks. That brings me to my first point. Service to one's community promotes personal growth, as Anya mentioned, and we didn't plan that. It involves that core value of the school, empathy. It's just about impossible to remain mired in one's self-centeredness as you engage in the work of service to others in any capacity. It deflates your ego and inflates your concern for others. It really strengthens your service muscle and puts you on the road to becoming fully human, what psychologists call self-actualization. A self-actualized person is engaged and empathetic, just what we promote at Brooks School. Service is also ancient wisdom. In the Gospel according to Matthew, Jesus said, "What you did to the least among you, you did unto me." He asks us to not only find the good in every person, but even the divine. Imagine the world if we all did this. This idea may seem like a burden, but consider it liberating. It creates a universality of the human condition that promotes compassion. That way, you can see the joy in others as your own joy, and the success of others as your own success. This is what the common world calls love. This was the central teaching of Jesus, but it had a practical side as well. When Jesus was done teaching, he said, "I have told you these things so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete." The byproduct of joy is a pretty good result of helping others. Next, I think we're all on different roads to our own personal futures. But at this intersection point, we all share this Brooks School experience. Even though you may not feel particularly advantaged at the moment, please see that by virtue of your membership in this community, you are heavily, heavily advantaged and privileged. We are really the 1%. Let's call it Brooks privilege. My question to you is, how will you use your Brooks privilege? Will you squander it on personal reward alone, or live a life full of joy that comes with service? Also, through community service, you can learn about yourself. It literally reveals yourself to yourself. This is what we call self-knowledge. We know this through the expression, know thyself. And many of you know that this was the very highest ideal in classical Greek civilization. You learn so much about yourself through service to others. So I ask you, what good is it to be getting an A in math or history but be getting an F in self-knowledge? You would be blind to your own flaws and weaknesses, and that would be both tragic and sad. So make time to serve your fellow man, in part to gain personal insight. Service to others is also about relationships, again, as Anya mentioned. And Mr. Chapman has said in this chapel that we derive meaning and are defined by our relationships. Believe me, community service will enhance your relations with others. It will get you beyond your own worries, anxiety, and problems that we all have. It will likely lead you to membership in civic and philanthropic organizations. And that keen 19th century observer of America, Alex de Tocqueville, believed that these organizations were a particularly strong American phenomenon. In fact, some called it that they were the most American thing about America. And there are so many fun ways to get involved. You can usually pursue a favorite pastime in philanthropy through things like the Hike for Hope, Run for the Troops, or Toys for Tots that we sponsor at Christmas time. It gets you outside and it gets you active. Lastly, I think service will prepare you for leadership. Many in this chapel, over my many years here at Brooks, have touched on this notion. Literally, service is leadership, and leadership is service. The 19th century Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore said it best when he said, "I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy." In the end, in the short term, I would love for all of you to try community service at Brooks before you graduate. In the long term, I hope you all will make plans to integrate regular service into your life in some capacity. Thanks for listening.